Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we are all in good health. Today, allow me to introduce our panelists. We have got Pastor Liveni Moyo. Pastor Liveni Moyo, could you please greet our guests? Is Pastor Liveni with us?
Yes, I am, Elder. I was just having difficulty unmuting there. Hello, everyone. So thank you so much. I'm excited to be on this platform. It's my first time, and it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much, Elder Machando, for hosting this program, and look forward to the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Laveni. Ango Ivan, could you please greet our guests?
Hello, young people and those who are young at heart. My name is Uncle Ivan, and I'm so excited to be here. While I wish I could say the same thing like Pastor Lavin and say, oh, this is my first time here, but while it is not my first, and I've just enjoyed, and I was marshalling this trip before the good elder came in, and those who are coming from Dublin, those who are coming from the Cape Point, those who are in Harare, those who are in the eastern part of Africa, wherever you are welcome to the most exciting youth talk show as we go ahead. Over to you, my good elder.
Thank you very much, Uncle Ivan. Mr. Mtema.
Hi, guys. Thanks for being here. We hope we will learn. We have so many things to learn and unlearn. Thank you so much for being here. May God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Without wasting time, Mrs. Machand is going to be joining us soon. She will be here with me very soon, and you will see her when she comes. Basically, ladies and gentlemen who are here, today is a gentleman's meeting, and the ladies will participate if there is need to. What we need to discuss is the fantasies that people have as they get into marriage, the fantasies and the realities of marriage. And like we said yesterday, at times it's so good to fantasize, at times it's so good to dream, but by the end of the day, if your dreams, if action is not put behind the dreams, nothing is going to come out of it. So we want to discuss some of the issues that normally happen, some of the issues, dreams that we normally have as young people, some of the things that we believe will happen when we get married. We want to see whether the reality is that in store for us, or our dreams are going to be nightmares. Basically, like we do every day, this is how we are going to hold our meeting. We are going to have a discussion between now and 15:30. At 15:30, we are going to open the platform for questions. So by the end of the day, everyone with a question who wants to talk to us, you will be given the opportunity to do so. But on the same note, our chat will be open so much so that any question that will be raised on chat, if we can do justice to it before we open up for the question time, we'll do justice to it. If we do not do justice to it, do not worry, we are going to attend to it as soon as possible. Now we get into the issue. Let's talk. Ango Ivan, Elder Mutema, and Pastor Laveni, I'm passing this on to you. What is the difference between fantasy and a dream? Is it good to fantasize? Is it good to dream big? Is it bad for someone to get into marriage whilst we are having this fantasy in your mind? Is it bad? Isn't it healthy for a relationship? I would want a response from either of you in a nutshell. I'll start with Elder Mtema.
Right. Thank you, Elder. There is maybe in a second, I know Pastor Moyo and Uncle Ivan would want to respond to this. There's nothing wrong with fantasizing. The only problem comes when you want to replace the fantasy with reality. We would do well to ourselves when we separate the two. The only challenge comes when you then mistaken the fantasy for reality.
Thank you very much. What Elder Munya is saying, it is not bad to dream, it is not bad to fantasize, but you must always remember, after you have dreamt, you should wake up to work so that your dreams come true. Dreaming on its own is not a sin, but not putting the dreams to reality is something else. Uncle Ivan, what do you have to say?
You know, it's exciting. I remember even when I was in primary school, I learned at a school here in Zimbabwe, in a place called Kambuzuma. It's called Kurai. I mean, every time we had a very interesting dream. I mean, it was so exciting to gather your friends together and tell them, hey, guys, I had a dream. Of course, not the Martin Luther type of I have a dream, but I mean, you know, just expressing to your friends that you actually had a dream. And sometimes, young as I was, I would actually dream flying an aeroplane. That time it was a chopper. I remember the story very well, the one I'm particularly referring to. But every time you wake up, you realize that, hey, I'm not in a chopper, I'm actually in real life. But I am responsible for making sure that one day I get into that chopper. So dreaming is not bad. Actually, dreaming is an opportunity for us to realize our potential. But the problem is when we actually stay in the dream and never wake up to work hard so that we make the dream become a reality. The difference between a dream and a fantasy, some people say a fantasy is something that you think of when you're actually awake, and a dream is something that you have when you are sleeping. But a fantasy is like when you are in class and your teacher is teaching you geography, but you are busy in another land with something, with someone thinking high of what you could do. But like Elder Mtema rightfully said, and I think Elder and my good Pastor Laven would also concur, there is nothing wrong in dreaming and sometimes fantasizing. The only problem is when we deceive ourselves that we are now living the dream, when we are still actually in the same place that we are. We need to wake up and then start working to make the dream come real. Over to you, Melody.
Thank you very much. Please take note of what has been said. There is the difference between a dream and fantasy is basically a dream is had whilst you see you have objectives in mind, you are thinking big and you are thinking of things that are attainable. But at times the person who lives in a world of fantasy, even if when things are going left, he wants to believe things are going right and he can follow the tide and get nowhere. So by the end of the day, when we are talking of fantasy and say it is a health at times, we are talking of the positive side of it. Pastor Laveni.
Thank you, Elder Chachando. I totally concur with the former speakers. And I also want to say that, look, fantasies and dreams are good. But I also think that we need to come to a point where we face the reality of the existence of a fantasy. You could end up living a fantasy and you become totally detached from reality. And at that point, a fantasy becomes suicidal and a very big risk to any endeavor you may want to engage in.
Thank you very much. And mind you, what we are saying is fantasizing must never be an emergence button from reality. Basically, what we need is we need to follow reality. We need to be true on what is happening around us so much so that we can attain our values and our goals. Thank you very much. Now, let's go into the matter. Now, we want Elder Munya. Can you tell me, is it bad to dream having a nice house, driving a nice car, my wife also driving, and making sure everyone else is provided for? And when someone behaves in like manner, would we say that person is fantasizing or is dreaming big?
Yeah, thank you, Elder. There is absolutely nothing wrong in dreaming. Actually, there is everything wrong when you don't dream, especially concerning the aspect that you touched on. It is highly dangerous. Today we are talking to the guys. It is highly dangerous for a young lady to court or to date someone who's not a dreamer, someone who doesn't fantasize at some point, someone who doesn't wish for those high things. It is very, very dangerous. Our role model, who is Jesus, was also a dreamer here, and he would try a lot of things. That's why he achieved a lot of things. So allow me to respond by saying, it is actually bad not to dream. The only challenge that we have, especially concerning the aspects that you asked specifically, your question was, is it bad to dream having a nice house, a nice car for your future wife and so forth? The only challenge comes when you stop when you stop the next step. The only challenge comes when you continue dreaming and you never wake up to start waking. And unfortunately, that's what happens to most of the guys in the Christendom, to most of the guys who are very good Christians. Most guys, they continue dreaming and they never wake up here. They continue praying for a nice house. They continue praying for a nice car. They continue praying for a very good life. But unfortunately, few then start working towards that. So many people have fantasies of a good marriage. Many people, they dream of having a very beautiful wedding, hiring a Hummer, hiring a Pajero. They dream of a very nice honeymoon. They see themselves renting a nice apartment in town, and later on moving to Borodale, Brook, and so forth. You know, there's nothing wrong with those dreams, but most of our young men, it all ends up there. And to make matters worse, some of our young men, they do all they can. Some they even borrow. You know, I know of a young man who during COVID, we had a lengthy chat, and my proposal to him was, look, take advantage of the COVID situation and have a small wedding. 10, 20, or even 30, maximum 50 people, so that you have a small budget. But you know, he says, Mkoma, I've always dreamed of a big wedding, and I'm going to wait until COVID ends so that I have a very big wedding. When COVID partially ended, when the lockdown was lifted, he had a big wedding, but unfortunately, he borrowed all the money, you know, and soon after the wedding, life happened and life started. Because, you know, many times what we have is drama, and the reality always knocks when the two of you are left alone on the center stage. And life started happening, and life is still happening. And he's saying, I wish I had known, I would not have married. So there's nothing wrong in dreaming about a nice house, a nice home, and all the fantasies. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, the only challenge is most of our guys, they stop there in fantasizing and dreaming. But when life then starts, when the wedding is over, because it is very easy to have a wedding. You can approach one or two guys. This one gives you beans, the other one gives you chickens, the other one gives you a nice suit, the other one gives you a venue. But you know, when the wedding is over, you can't continue borrowing money. The wife gets pregnant. You can't borrow money for the maternity bills. You have a baby, you can't continue borrowing money for the diapers. There's food that needs to be taken care of. There are rentals that needs to be taken care of. You know, reality knocks, and most of our young men, they seem not to realize that. They seem not to realize that there are responsibilities that are there. And I want to say to my young brothers, especially those that are on this platform, that there is more to life than the wedding that we dream for. There is more to life than the honeymoon that we all wish for. There are responsibilities that as men you have to take care of. I always tell my daughters at church and those that I associate with that when a guy comes to you, you need to ask him what's his plan after the wedding. Don't waste your time talking about the wedding, but start asking the guy what's his plan after the wedding, because the Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs that a wise man leaves inheritance for his children's children. He doesn't leave inheritance for his wife. He doesn't leave inheritance for his children. The Bible says a wise man leaves inheritance for his children's children. And unfortunately, most young men that we have today, they have nothing to show up, you know. Fine, they have done a nice wedding, but the afterlife, the responsibilities of the wedding. I have a friend of mine who today, they are battling with the wife. The wife is saying, before I get pregnant, I need a car. I can't be pregnant doing public transport. I can't be pregnant doing all the mshika-shikas and so forth. And I told my friend that she's not being materialistic, she's being realistic. Because this is what she needs, and this is a fair demand. So most young men, they don't realize the demands that are there, the responsibilities that are there. Nothing wrong with dreaming, nothing wrong with fantasizing. But as men, we need to step up. We need to realize before we get married, we need to realize that a man has to be a provider. A man has to provide the things that he dreams for. There's so much working hard that needs to take place before one gets married. When I'm still a youth, there are things that I still need to put in place so that when I then get married, the responsibilities that are there, they have to be met. But unfortunately, most of us, we get super excited. We save up just for the wedding, but soon after the wedding, when life starts, many of us are not prepared.
Thank you very much, Elder Mtema. And I've always noticed that people say things are difficult, the economies are bad, things are going bad, and they find your boyfriend cannot even buy airtime, your boyfriend cannot even buy ice cream, your boyfriend cannot even buy pizza. And by the end of the day, everyone believes that tomorrow, he who cannot buy airtime today can buy airtime tomorrow. I'm not saying people who can't buy airtime today cannot buy airtime tomorrow. But by the end of the day, what I'm getting from Elder Mtema is, if you can't do it today, if you don't plan today, if you can't invest today, if you can't make money today, there's no way you can make money tomorrow. And by the end of the day, it must be our aim, it must be our objective to make sure we do not die as our parents did and leave your children problems rather than investments. So basically, the first mistake that people make is they believe things are going to change when they get married. Nothing is going to change when you get married. Nothing is going to change when you have a wife. Nothing is going to change when you want diapers. The way you are living today, the way you are struggling today, the struggle must be much bigger than what you think today. I don't know.
Just to add on to that, just to add on to that, Elder. So we are not saying every young man should be super rich before they get married. No. We are saying every young man should have a plan. Every young man right now, where we are with the little opportunities that we have in our little corners, let's do our best wherever we are. With the $10 that I have, let's utilize the little incomes that we have, you know, with the small things that we have. Let's plan. Let's utilize what we're there. One of my favorite writers talk of it. She calls it thriftness. She says one of the key capitals that a young man can have in this world, it is thriftness. And when you dig deeper into the meaning of thriftness, it is utilizing the resources that you have at the moment. So every young man needs to realize that when one gets married, there are serious responsibilities that we are going to have. The responsibilities as a father, the responsibilities as a husband, the responsibilities as a son-in-law, you know, all these responsibilities. It is how we are living now before we get married that will determine where we are when we get married. So we are not saying one should have a big car before he gets married, one should have a big house. No. We are saying wherever we are, even if I have a small musika where I'm doing tomatoes, how I take care of that small musika, the Bible says, "You who is faithful in the least will be faithful in the much." So how I take care of that musika is an indication of how I'm going to do when I cross over the bridge of marriage.
Thank you very much, Pastor Laveni and Uncle Ivy. I've got a question here as a follow-up to what Elder Mtema is saying. Normally we say we should measure capacity. We should measure as to whether a person is going to get there or he or she won't get there. And we normally say, we are not saying young people be rich. We are not saying young people own houses. We are not saying young people do this. My question is, at what point will we say this young man is now living in fantasy than reality? At what point do we say this is no longer a young man. At what point should someone have money? At what point should someone have assets? At what point should someone start living as he was dreaming at a specific point? At what point? Pastor Laveni?
Thank you, Elder. Thank you very, very much. And thank you, Elder Mtema, for that wonderful presentation. I want to take it from the perspective of worldview. I'm sure those who've heard this word have an understanding of what it means, that your worldview, basically your worldview is defined as the spectacles through which you perceive reality, or the spectacle through which you see things. It's the glass through which you see things. And so many expectations are created through our worldview. And your worldview can be formulated by your religious background. It can be formulated by your own experience. Your worldview can be formulated by, by the family context from which you came. And so in terms of our topic, many of our young men get into marriage with a worldview that is totally different from their spouse. And I want us to understand and appreciate that our worldview undergirds many of the things which are going to be spoken of here. It influences your perception on investment. It influences your perception on money. It influences your perception on religion. It influences your perception on sexual intimacy in marriage. And so what we need to appreciate in the little experience that Mrs. Moy and I have had in terms of premarital counseling, this is the very first topic that we deal with. And we unpack and unravel the different worldviews. And often in the church, and I must say that as the church, we are so focused on the spiritual aspect. You must marry someone who's an Adventist. You must marry someone who is a vegetarian. You must marry someone who dresses in a particular way. And yet we do not deal with the real issue. Many of our young people are building unrealistic expectations based on unrealistic things, which when they get into the reality, there's a disconnect. I like one writer. His name is Philip Yancey. He writes a book called Disappointment with God. And he says disappointment takes place when the expectation and the reality are not in sync. So for example, you go into marriage and you have this preconceived idea on how a wife is supposed to behave. But you don't realize that when your spouse is coming into the marriage, they have a worldview they are coming from. I'll give you one example. I'll use my own experience. You see, I grew up in a home where my father would wake me up at 4 a.m. to go into the garden. My wife, on the other hand, grew up in the home of a writer. So my wife's father was a writer. So what he would do is that he would come late from work, and he would start writing his books from around 12 midnight up to around 4 or 5 a.m. So what would happen in their home? They would be told to sleep until around 10. Why? Because the mother did not want them to disturb their father. So you see the difference in worldviews. I came with the worldview which says, no, in order for you to be productive, you have to wake up early. She came with the worldview which says, no. Her father is being productive, so we must sleep in late. So imagine the point of conflict now. When I wake up at 4 and my wife is fast asleep. So we need to appreciate that sometimes as young people, as young men, we superimpose our preset worldviews onto our spouses, and we fail to accept and we fail to appreciate that they have a different worldview. So one of the greatest points of conflict is superimposing your value system on a person who is different from you. And you know, I like what Elder Tetema was speaking about. I just want to give my 2 cents on that. And I know Elder Machando also posed the same question. When we look at this concept from a biblical point of view, God gave Adam an occupation before he gave him a wife. That's the first thing we must appreciate. I believe strongly that a man that cannot manage his own affairs will not be able to manage a family. If you can't clean up after yourself, if you can't put your things in order, if you can't exercise the basic principle of living within your means, if you cannot do those things, then I can assure you, you will have difficulty managing a household. So you'll discover that many people, when they get into marriage, they are children who need to be taken care of. So we become a burden to our spouses. Why? Because our spouses are leaving their father's house, leaving their mother's house to be married to a child who's coming in, but who is, who is honored by being called a husband. I strongly believe that any individual, any young man who cannot manage his affairs cannot manage a household. I see you, the Elder Machando. Let me close with this statement.
No, don't close. I'm listening to you. I'm okay. It's all right.
Okay.
Don't worry. We have all the time here.
Wonderful. I want to suggest to all the young men here who are watching on this platform, I would suggest, besides the literature we have in the church, I want you to go and look for a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. That book, it emancipated me the day I read it. It speaks of financial literacy, financial freedom, because unfortunately, as young people, as young men, we have left the concept of providing for our families. We have left the concept of managing our affairs. And then we say, no, because God said, my wife must be an helpmeet for me. Our women and our wives are now taking the mantle of being the breadwinners, being the providers. A spouse or a wife is coming to help in an occupation which is already there. She is not coming to replace your responsibility as a man, to stand as a man, to guide, to lead, to give the vision. And so the concept of worldviews is a very critical concept. Many of us have a skewed understanding, a huge misconception of our role. And so when we then get into marriage, we have these fantasies of wanting to be called, I'm the father of the household. You know, we've got 2 boys, my wife and I. And not too long ago, we realized that we are creating and rearing up a big problem. I think Elder Machando once highlighted it when he was speaking in one of his, in one of his programs. So I won't dwell much on it. But the mother, while training the girl child, where is the boy child? The boy child is being reminded of his totem. You are a Shumba, you are a lion. You know, you are Zulu, you are Shona, you are Mkaranga, you are Ndendebele. That is what you are. You are a king. Okay? The girl child is being trained in how to take care of the house. She's being trained to manage her affairs. But the young man is being trained to have an overinflated sense of, a sense of entitlement. That's the word I'm looking for. So these young men are coming into marriage with a huge sense of entitlement. And we come in, we push our weight, we are bosses. And at the end of the day, you discover that these households of these young men and these young women, it is the wife who becomes the head. And yet, your God-ordained responsibility is to head. I'll close with this as I give Pastor Gwagwatringa. Productivity is an important element as an individual. Jesus says, the children of this world are wiser than the children of the kingdom. I fail to understand, even financially, how an Adventist Christian does not have the desire to start a business, does not have the desire to improve himself, does not have a strong desire to own his own property. Instead, we are living in this bubble where we think that things are just supposed to come to us because we know the spirit of prophecy, because we're Adventist, because we wear suits, because we're handsome. Life, the reality of life is not like that. Elder Machanda, Mama Chando, thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Pastor Ivan. If I heard Pastor Laven, if I heard Pastor Moyo correctly, gentlemen, ladies are being trained to run the house, not to run a dream. Therefore, when you continue dreaming without building the house, there is a point at which we say you are no longer dreaming, but you are fantasizing. That's number one. Number two, there are times when we should dream of issues, but there are times when we should wake up to make those things happen. And the unfortunate thing is, many people have got very good dreams, but they will never become reality. And when that happens, that's fantasizing. And unfortunately, from what I hear these guys say, you cannot bring someone into that life of yours until you put order into it first. If you do not put order into that, then there is a problem. Before I come to Uncle Ivan, OC, what do you have to say?
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I being heard?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. My challenge is that we have got a world that is empowering women, if we have already said. We've got young men who think that marriage is all about laughing and joking and things like that. And we have got young men who are disconnected at 3 levels from reality. One, at the economic level, where people don't realize those people who are maybe materially successful in their marriage, they started from ground zero. And they were not even, they didn't have anything. They worked up the ladder together, the husband and the wife. And people start at a certain level and they want to keep up appearances and appear to be what they are not. That's number one. Number two, another disconnect is at spiritual level. The last time here on this group, there are some people who asked me that they could be connected together. When I was trying to connect this on the platforms, guys and ladies, you should know that we are also connecting people here, not in a bad way. So I asked them to give me the names of their elders, the names of their pastors, everyone, so that I could check if they were all genuine. Now, when I wanted to then proceed to connect them to each other, the guy sent me a spiritual list. Says, does she know spirit of prophecy? Does she know this, a whole list? The girl also sent a whole list. Is she vegetarian? Is this a whole long list? Then they checked each other. Then I said, okay, you can now talk to each other. The first thing the guy did was, when they spoke, was to ask, can you give me an interpretation of Revelation chapter 13? Give me in detail. You know, there was not even any attempt to understand who this person is, to know that they are a real person who have weakness, who have challenges. These people are both Christians. They spoke with each other for just 1 week. Thereafter, the girl said, no, this guy is not for me. He's judgmental. He's this. Being Christian was not the whole solution to everything. You then realize that most of these things, we are just fantasizing on things that are not real. Be realistic on the expectations that you have. I'm not saying you start looking for someone who does not know God, but you will then find that all these people go in with a shopping list hoping that they can change someone to become what they want. Marriage is work. When you are going into marriage, when you are going into a relationship, you are going into a work engagement. And when you go there with the attitude that I'm going to work. And for it to work, you have to work yourself. And in a relationship, you are not going to look for the right partner. You are going to be the right partner because it's challenging. And we are expecting you to transform the economies of the country. More in marriage, Mom. That's why you find us zeroing in on this, because there's nothing that will affect a man's life more than the partner they married. It doesn't matter whether they're a genius or not. Their whole genius can be brought down by that. And there's nothing that will affect a young lady more than the person. I would rather have you not marry, because marriage is a lot of work. But when you work on it, it is a lot of exciting work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Basically, what I'm getting from here, if you can't work for the marriage, if you can't work for your stomach, how can you work for the marriage to work? If laziness is your motto and fantasizing is the game that you play hard, basically what is going to happen is everyone else who joins you must always live in the world of fantasy. And unfortunately, you're fantasy, and it does not work like that. So what we need, what we are talking about here is, we are not saying the poor will vanish from the earth. We are not saying we are all going to make a lot of money, but we are saying make enough. If you can't make enough for you to sustain a family, you would rather not marry fantasizing, but get into reality, see how things happen. Thank you very much. Uncle Ivan.
You know, I was laughing when Osi was giving us his a testimony of trying to connect the young people. Well, it's good that we get connected here. I think on the onset, when we started, we were trying to differentiate between dreams, fantasies, and how we need to wake up to our dreams. I've got a book that I'm holding here. It's called Treasures for Men. I'm willing even to give it to the one young man here who will probably at the end of it, when you ask questions, if I think your question is good enough, I'll send you a copy of this book. It's called Treasures for Men. Before I go straight into answering your question, I want to read a statement that is written here. It says, a man is not finished when he is defeated. He is finished when he quits. This is from Richard Nixon. It is actually saying, you know, when you are a man, the only time when you are finished is when you start quitting. You were talking about an issue of how then do you differentiate between a man who is living in a fantasy or a man who has actually realized his dream. Thank you, Elder Tema, Pastor Laven, and Elder Osi for laying the foundation so well. I think my work now is very simple because I'm now just putting the cherry on top on a foundation that has been laid pure and clear. Now go to the book of 2 Kings chapter 6. There's an interesting story. You remember in Elisha and these, I could call them young men at the school of prophets, and they're trying to prepare a place. And as they're doing so, one of the young men, I'm assuming he was probably working the hardest, and then his axe-head falls into the water. The first thing he does, he says, behold, my master, it was borrowed. In other words, from the way probably, I'm just assuming he was working with this axe-head, it was like he owns it. But most people who saw him saw a different picture of this guy. But unfortunately, the things that he was shining with were borrowed. Allow me to assume and say, for many young people who are here, you know, I would rather have a boy who is walking on foot or who is cycling, who is real to himself, than a boy who is using his father's car or his uncle's car to try and portray an image that he is not. One writer once said, your imitation is only your limitation. It's only when you stop living a lie that you actually see the advantages and the capacity of you to move on from your fantasies, from your dreams, and put it into action. Allow me to say to the young men under the dictates of my voice, be the true you. Don't portray a picture of who you are not. Don't live a borrowed life, because a borrowed life, one of these days it shall come to pass when people realize that all along, but this is not the real person that we're seeing. So from you to move from your fantasies and your dreams to go into a space of reality, you must stop living a borrowed life. Even if you have to go to church, look good in the clothes that you own. Don't borrow ties. Don't borrow, the brown shoes, the red ties, and the blue jacket, so that you look good on Sabbath or the day that you go to church, so that people might see a picture of who you are not. Your imitation is only your limitation. So I want to encourage and charge the young men who are here. Be real to yourself. Don't even imitate to be who you are not. Just a quick story as I go to probably the other thing that I want to mention is I grew up in a place called Kambuzuma. I think I mentioned here in Zimbabwe, Harare. There was a madman. And this guy, his problem was, how come people never believe me? Anything I say, people don't believe me. So you know what he decided to do one day? He went into a shop. There was a shop called Spam now right there at the Civic Center in Kambuzuma. He bought a packet of Christo sweets. And he got out and got to a group of young men who were just, sipping on the mineral and just having a good life. And the guys, when they saw this madman, said, hey, where did you get these sweets? He said, you have not heard. Just behind these shops, there's a truck from Christo. It fell and there are sweets all over the place. Now, he wanted just to make sure that people believe him once. And people started running towards where he had pointed that the truck was. You know what he did? He followed the people, hoping and wishing that he would also find a truck of sweets. What I'm saying is sometimes you might live a lie to an extent that you end up believing your own lie. Wake up and live the life you ought to do. Now, before I come back to you, my good elder, there's this notion, I heard it when we once at the youth camp. I think it was in Masvingo 2 years ago. We were in a class discussion. One of the young men raised his hand and he said, you know what, Pastor, I want to get married so that I can run away from the temptations that I face. His worldview, Pastor Laveno was telling him that the only way he can forgo or he can defeat the temptations in his life is to get married. Let me tell you, he was lying to himself. In fact, he was moving from a smaller temptation to a bigger temptation. I don't know which worldview that young men think that the moment that they get married, these temptations will stop coming. Actually, the moment you get married, temptations might come even in the hugest of moments that you even wonder, hey, why did I get married? In other words, don't get married hoping and thinking that the moment I get married, I'll do away with my temptation. You are not marrying Jesus who will redeem you from your sins. You are marrying yet another imperfect human being. So in other words, what we are saying is, don't ever think that going into marriage, you are running away from problems. In other words, each level of life, I think it was Elder Osi was talking about the different levels. Even when we talk of fantasies and dreams, they come in the form of spiritual, social, cognitive, and these are some of the social fantasies that we have to say, I can live a life right now of the things that I want. When I get married, I'll forgo it. I think Elder Mtema put a very good foundation on it. It says, kanone kamsika kako right now. It is an indication of what it will become even when you get married. So don't think if you play around, if you flirt, if you do so many things right away, if you live a TikTok life now, when you get into marriage, it will just automatically change. You need to start preparing for what becomes your reality then, even when you live it now. Therefore, I want to charge the young men under the dictates of my voice today. Start practicing what you ought to see in your marriage. I think it was Barack Obama who said, be the change that you expect to see. Don't think that when you move into marriage, all the things that you were doing in your dating life will just disappear automatically. No, marriage, you work for it. I think Elder Osi mentioned it. You need to work so hard for you to be able to realize the things that you want to do in your marriage. And remember, a man is not finished when he is defeated. A man is finished when he quits. One author, I think it was, I'm not so sure, but I'm thinking strongly that it was Mahatma Gandhi who said the grave is probably the richest place, because you've got young men and men who had so many dreams, but were never able to wake up to realize those dreams. You need to wake up. You wake up the giant in you to make the dreams that you have and even the fantasy, to make them a reality by working hard towards what you expect in your life. Over to you, my good elder.
Thank you very much. You see, I was going through the chat and Tinashe says, a man who views the world at 50, the same way he did at 20, he has wasted 30 years of his life. And this is one of the problems that we have. Normally, we don't want to stick to the truth because it hurts. This is the reason why he who is 20 is saying, I have a dream. And at 25, he has a dream. At 35, he has a dream. At 40, it's still a dream. At 45, it's still a dream. At what point do we wake up to reality? At what point do we tell our young people that is, you are now living in the world of fantasy? Because if we do not, we are not honest with each other, we are either going to postpone marriage, believing that our fantasies will come to an end, when in real life we are doing nothing to make sure that reality materializes. And postponing death might be a way of showing that you are fantasizing rather than acting upon issues of life. And I've noticed young people now are marrying even at 40. Some are marrying at 50. I'm not saying people should marry at 30. And the reason why they are marrying so late, it is because they say we are preparing. But when you realize how long does it take to prepare? At what point do we say our young people should be running the world? At what point do we say our young people should be running organizations? At what point do we say our young people should be materially secure? At what point do we say our young people should be ready to marry and to provide for the family? Let's cut this one clear. Let us be honest. At what point do we say, young men, at this point, you must be somewhere? Mr. Mtema, what do you have to say?
Thank you, Elder. Yeah, we might not have a definite timeline to say at 21, at 25, or at 30. But what's critical is the preparation that is taking place, including these Zoom meetings. These Zoom meetings are critical. They are preparing our young men to reach that stage where young men can say, I am ready. You know, most of us are not yet ready because these fantasies are still there. I want to thank Uncle, the angle that he just touched, but I also wanted to touch, I'll give an example of the spiritual life. You know, many times we fantasize that the moment I get married, I'll become a house priest and automatically my spiritual life is just going to change and we'll be so close to God and so forth. And most of us young men, they are living that fantasy. And when reality knocks, many people are shocked. Many people are disappointed when they then get in marriage and what they are seeing, the realities and what they were expecting is not so. So I wanted to say, pertaining the spiritual life, there are fantasies that we have that when I get into marriage, things are going to be so well. And simply because I married an Adventist.
Elder Mtema, before you, I want you to hold on to that. And I want to be direct here. Remember, there is the world of the young lady here, and there is the world of the male child here. And by the end of the day, these worlds are merging. And we are telling this young man to continuously postpone the happiness of the young woman once he is walking out of his fantasies, which might take forever. How come we do not have a limit to say, at 40, you are no longer a boy. At 30, you are no longer a boy. Why don't we have those clear cuts? Why is it that some have to get to 50, some have to get to 60, whilst there is a certain young lady who is waiting for that? I want an answer to this one, Elder Mtema, Uncle Ivan, Pastor Laveni, OC. I want an answer to this one before Munya articulates on the issue of spirituality. At what point, if I were to tell young ladies there to wait, until when are they going to wait whilst your dream comes true?
Can I come in, Elder?
Sure,
Yes.
sure.
I go back. Let me shift my contribution from worldview to mindset. You need to get to a point where you interrogate your belief system. your belief system on success, your belief system on spirituality. Because if we are simply people that simply adopt the limitations of the world views that we have been socialized into, someone will reach 50 still with a list of a shopping list of what a wife is supposed to be, what a husband is supposed to be. So my submission, elder, is we can only get to that point when we interrogate our paradigm. In other words, Pastor Moyo is saying, if we don't have a radical shift in our understanding of what marriage is, in our understanding of what the Bible says, then we'll always be stuck in a place where people are getting to 40 years old. I, for one, I'm hitting 40, and I've been married for 11 years. But I'm grossly dissatisfied with some of the things I took in my worldview, which are correct, which I took as correct. For example, in the worldview I grew up in a pastor's home, okay? There was no deliberate intentionality to teach me on the importance of creating wealth, on the importance of productivity. The productivity was taught in action, but not as a principle. But if you take the child of an Indian, Andiziga, from the time that they are young, they are already imbibed into enterprise. So, Elder Machando, my answer to your question is, we need to get our young people to a point where they interrogate their belief system and question themselves and say, are we in the right course? If the answer to that question is no, then people like yourself and myself and the church need to offer a viable alternative that leads to productive people that contribute productively, not only on this earth, but even for the kingdom to come.
Thank you very much. You see, the reason why we are talking about this thing is because we do not want people to be comfortable in their comfort zones when they are not moving. And the people who grow old, they sorry? Oh, okay. There was some feedback from there. Basically, what we are trying to interrogate here, what we are trying to get to is like what Pastor Laveni is saying. We need to interrogate some of our backgrounds, the way we were raised. Do we have an open check? Do we have forever to prepare? Can someone be a man at 30? Can you be a man at 20?
Elder, we have lost you.
All right. Maybe whilst you're waiting for the good elder, is he back on?
Elder, are you back?
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. We need to say at what point you get what I mean? Because the way we were raised, the way Pastor Lavin was raised, the way Munya was raised, the way Uncle Ivan was raised, we were just raised to be spiritually correct. We were never raised to be entrepreneurs. We were never raised to make money. We did not know at what point to have assets. All of a sudden you realize when you are 40, the other guys who are at 30, they have properties. The other guys who are at 30, they own flats. Why? Because they were in the good environment. Why we continuously tell each other in the ghetto that our time will come when other people's time has already come with the same opportunities that we have. We want to know at what point do we tell our young people that your dreams have become fantasies. You are no longer dreaming. You are not seizing on opportunities. What have you to say?
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'll be a little bit radical on this one. I'm not the radical one. I think my worldview is a children's ministry's worldview, and we are not taught to be radical. But for once, Pastor Lavin, allow me to be a little bit radical. Well, because for those maybe, let me just give a brief profile, I'm actually a youth director in the East Zimbabwe Conference in the Adventist Church. And I want to appreciate that we do have quite a number of people who might not be Adventist here. But can I give you just a quick background? In the Adventist Church, where I am a pastor and I'm actually working as a youth director, the youth ministry is divided into two. We've got what are called ambassadors, who range from the age between 15 right about to about 21. Then we've got what are called young adults who are being prepared. In this case, are young men who are being prepared to become men. It runs from 25 to the maximum of 35. After 35, no one expects you to be in the same young adults, because they now expect you to be in another worldview, mind thinking, which is called men's ministries, because we're talking to men here. I'm not talking to the girls, because remember, we're talking about dreams and fantasies to the men. So I'll be a little bit radical here. You know, the dividing of this particular ministry that we have in my context of the church, to say we've got ambassadors whom we are trying to mold and probably prepare them to become entrepreneurs, to become the people that we want from the age of should be 16 right up to 24, 25. You should be able to transit into another level or another space where we now call you young adults, which means in the young adults, the church has seen it fit to say, if we were true to what we have been oracled to be able to impart and impact on these young people, up to age 35, they should have been made many enough to be able to then say, hey guys, I can't continue staying in this space. From 35, I must have had, it could be a great foundation. I might not be owning a house. I might not be driving a very big car, but I have essentials enough for me to build a foundation and start a family. So using that background and looking at what people were seeing and thinking upon the lives of young men and young women, especially to the men under the dictates of my voice, it is therefore then that at the age of 35, at most, you might have put building blocks and stepping stones that ushers you from becoming a young adult gentleman into becoming a man who is then running his own affairs. So the 10 years that the church, in my context or in whatever context you are, I actually checked with Salvation Army, I checked with Methodist, I checked with the Roman Catholic, I've not checked with the Pentecostal churches, but I realized that most of their youth ministries, which we call where young people are actually trained and actually put the base of them becoming men, because the context of our discussion today is young people, most of them actually have up to the age of 35. In other words, it seems to me that many spiritual leaders, even if you go into the world, when you go and join whatever political party, you cannot run for what is called a youth something when you're over 35 or 40 and above. In other words, they don't expect you to be in that bracket of the young people where they are. So I want to believe that the world and the spiritual leaders have seen it fit that once a young man in our context has been rightly furnished, rightly trained, you can't go up to 35 and still continue hoping that people will still buy airtime for you. They'll give you ties to match with your shoes to go to church. No, by that time, that's where David says to Solomon, be thou a man and show us that the foundations that have been laid. Now, remember, don't even blame the background like we mentioned some other time. The background was supposed to then give you that ability and tenacity and grit to be able to look and find mentors who make sure that when you get to the age of 35, you are now ripe and you are ready. I remember a drink called ripe and ready. You are ripe and ready for you to be able to do what a man is expected. So I'll be radical on this one. 35 must be the maximum for a young man to have been rightfully trained, rightly mentored to a place where we expect them to lead and go forward. And if you are teachable and if you are willing to be mentored, I think 35 is a good age.
Thank you very much. Eldam Tema. Also, now we need to articulate on the spiritual component. The reason why I was making reference to this, it is because I have realized and I have noticed when we were growing up, our fathers mentored us to be what they were. You could plow a field, you could plant the seed, even at 14. And because people, people were subsisting on that particular type of economy. A man would be a man even at 16 because he was taught. And one thing that we are not doing is we are not teaching our children to be what they are not, what they are supposed to be. And because of that, we are giving them a very long rope. Very soon at 60, someone will be crying foul. Why? Because they were not exposed. So we need to be clear on this particular issue. For me, I didn't take it lightly because when we were growing up in the ghetto there, we were treated like boys. They said our opportunities would come. But when you grew up, you realized some people of my age have already covered a lot of milestones. Others are owning property, whilst we're still running around talking of nothing and dreaming of nothing. I think we should raise the standard high so that this fantasy disappears from the dashboard of the young people. Elder Mtema?
Yeah, I also wanted to respond to that, Elder, to say, thanks, Uncle, for being radical, to say 35. Allow me to be extreme. Thank you, you were radical, but I'll be extreme. 35 is even far, Elder. The moment one considers having a girlfriend, by that time, that person should be well trained to be a man. So if you are going to think of having a girlfriend at 21, by that time already you should be a man. Because having a girlfriend is a sign that you are a man. You know, you have a girlfriend because you now want to marry. And you marry when you have done all the preparations, financially, spiritually, socially, all aspects of life, having a skill and so forth. So I wanted to say, to me, I think we need to raise the standard high to say when one now is now asking out someone, when one now wants to settle, by that time, that person should already have set his things in place. He might not have millions, but he should have set his things in place. He might not have a car, he might not have a house, but he should already have a skill, something that he can do with his own hands. He might not have a business that is running and so forth, but already he should have put things in place. You know, academically, someone already should have chosen a line that already he wants to move. So I wanted to say, not even 35. I wanted to say, Uncle, let's raise the standard high. A young man should say, I'm 16, I'm 18. You know, I always give this example to the young men at, especially at my local church, to say, by 18, every young man should be able to drive. You know, not because you have a car, not because your parents have cars, not because where you stay there's a garage, but this is a must that every young man should. This is a typical basic skill that every man should have. Not because you're coming from a well-up background, but this is a, you know, back then, I know, fine, I'm not from the 70s and the 60s, but there were basic skills that every man should have. Things like kufudza, things like hunting, you know, these were basic skills. Nowadays, we don't have that. We don't have kufudza and hunting and all. But I think we need to change our mindset. There are basic skills that we now need, things like driving. I mean, every young man should just have those things. So at a tender age, by tender, I mean you're 16, you're 18, you're 20, you're 21s, because our young men are asking out our sisters at a very tender age. And I think we need to change our mindset to say, for us to avoid the fantasies that people are having, we need our men to brace up. We need our young men to be men way before they start getting in relationships. You know, it is the right of every young woman to say, I mean, you're asking me out, what do you have to offer? What is a skill that you have? You know, someone should not just bring a master's or an undergrad degree on the table. Someone needs to ask the man to say, let's assume the paper will not be there. How are you going to take care of me? How are you going to take care of the children? You know, and those things should be there. And I'll continue highlighting this. The grand things might not be there, but at least there should be well-defined plans that are there. So we need our men to raise up the standard to say at an early stage, at a tender age, you know, when you study how the Jewish system runs, way before a young man goes to 21, he already has defined lines that he knows I'm going to earn my living in this way. And I want to encourage our young men to say, at a very tender age, way before 35, yeah, to Uncle, I said, I know, Uncle, you're being radical by saying 35, but I think it's high time we need to raise the standard up high. You know, Christ, he did all he did at a very tender age. At 27, he was baptized. 30 to 33, he was dead. So way before he got to 35, Christ had done his mission, done and dusted, and he had said, I have fought a good fight. Now I just want to encourage our men to say, let's raise the standard high. So coming back to the question that you highlighted, I wanted to say there are also some fantasies that people have before they get married concerning the spiritual aspect. And when people then get in marriage, many people are then shocked to say, hey, I thought things were just going to flow simply because we are all Methodists or simply because we are Adventists. And I wanted to say to our young men, we need to work on our spiritual lives way before we get married. Because when you get married, my brothers, your wife, who is now your girlfriend, is just going to dance according to the tune that you set. Many people, they think that the wife is going to help me. She's a helpmeet. She's going to help me to up my spiritual game. But alas, men, we are the house priests of our houses. And we need to beef up our spiritual lives before we get married. Because when you get married, whatever the tone that you set, that is what your house is going to be like. She's not going to be the priest of the house. And many people with so many misconceptions, especially when it comes to the spiritual lives. So I always say to the young men, eat as much as you can before you get married. Read as much as you can. You have a firm foundation in terms of your spiritual life before you get married. When you get married, there's so many responsibilities that are there. You might not get all the time to start reading, to start preparing for the devotions and so forth. But you will do well when you do all the preparations before you get married. Because when you then get into marriage, there are serious responsibilities spiritually that you then find. You talk of your in-laws, you talk of even your own family. There are so many spiritual problems that you then find. And so many people receive shocks when they are in marriage. Yet, when they had all the time before they get married, they were not building up their spiritual foundation. So I wanted to say to our gentlemen, spiritually, there is so much work that needs to take place when you are in marriage. Now when you are dating, you know your wife from a distance. You don't really know the flaws in her character. And it is when you start staying together, that's when you start realizing spiritually that she has this flaw. You also start realizing your spiritual flaws. Whereas when you get children, you start realizing their spiritual flaws. But when you don't have this spiritual background, this spiritual backbone, which is formed during your youthhood, many people will be surprised, and many people, they buckle off. Many people, they then have a serious blow in marriage. So I always encourage our young men to say, the fantasy that when you get married, the spiritual life is just going to flow. We'll be going to church early morning. We'll be attending mission camps. We'll be donating to such places, to all the orphanages. It's not so. When you get married, reality starts knocking. That's when you start realizing the spiritual weaknesses that you have. You start realizing that you're not as patient as you thought. You start realizing that your wife is not as kind as you thought. But when you have done your homework, when you have when you have put the spiritual foundation, when you have put all the pillars in your spiritual life way before you get married, when you then get into marriage, you are at an advantage point. You stand at a better ground. So men, I need you to beef up your spiritual lives before you get into marriage, because when you get into marriage, you're going to realize so many spiritual battles are there in your spiritual life. I was talking to one person who then realized that your wife doesn't sleep throughout the night. He says, each time when I wake up, my wife will be up. She'll be looking at me. And this is something that you can't go to your pastor. This is something that you can't even go to your parents. This is something that you need to face on your own. He would say, each time when I would wake up, my wife would just be looking at me. And if I ask her, honey, what's happening? She says, and just like that. Each time he wakes up, the wife will be up, just looking at him. And these are some of the things that if you don't have a good spiritual backbone, you think otherwise. So men, we need to have a good spiritual backbone, because when you get in marriage, you're going to meet your in-laws. You don't know what they do at night. You don't know their spiritual backgrounds. You don't know the worldview that Pastor Moy was talking about. You don't know where they're coming from spiritually. You don't know the things that they do. When you get in marriage, that's when you start hearing these requests. Let's go kunorova guva. Let's go sekuru ningivana ita zvakati. When you get in marriage, that's when you start realizing your probably your wife's brother is a chief captain of Zigures. You start realizing all those things. Even before you get children, the moment she gets pregnant, you start hearing of these funny things that they have to do. So for you to be able to meet these things, you need to be spiritually sound. And many men, they meet these things without having a good spiritual background. So in our youthhood, before we get married, let's build this firm spiritual background, because in marriage, when you get married, you are the house priest. You are the one who calls the shots spiritually.
Thank you very much, Elder Mtema. I don't know how it feels when you wake up every day to realize that your wife is awake and looking at you, wondering what kind of a man I have here. I think that's quite an experience, and nobody would want to have that experience. And it is my wish and my prayer that as we speak and as we talk to each other right now, we really change. And you know what? If you can't say no to multiple girlfriends now, marriage is not going to say no on your behalf. If you can't say no to promiscuity now, marriage is not going to say no on your behalf. The reason why you are sleeping all over is not because you are not married. It is because you are not responsible. And the marriage does not bring about responsibility to a person who decides to be irresponsible. So by the end of the day, marriage will only but reveal issues, but not change issues. We need to be clear and we need to be honest. And for those out there with their hands up, please do not tire. I'm now about to get into the question time. We are going to give opportunities to each and every one of us to ask whatever question one has. And since this is already 28 past, I open the platform. Those with questions, please raise your hands. We'll take the questions as we proceed. Now, whilst we are waiting for questions, our panelists, in 2 minutes, would you summarize the fantasies that you were articulating in person, so that those who did not catch up with you might be very clear of what you said? I start with Uncle Ivan. In summary, in 1 minute, what do you have to say as summary to the fantasies that you gave us? You are on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh. All right, let me add my volume. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can. All right, thank you. Let me just say to the young men who are here, I think it's very important for you to know that dreams are not seen in themselves. You need to dream big. You need to have these humongous, sometimes you even have to dream so much that it challenges you to become a better person than who you extol yourself to become. But the only problem will come if you don't wake up to work so hard to make those dreams a reality. Wow. I also want to make you know that sometimes don't ever see marriage as a solution to the problems you're encountering now. You need to start working for what you intend to see as the reality of what your dreams become. In other words, if you are promiscuous now, don't think that marriage will help you to become a better man. If you are not working hard now and you're waiting for people to put food on your table, don't think when you get married, things will change. marriage is not a game changer. Marriage is actually fulfilling the things that you worked hard for when you were young. And those dreams, I will continue repeating, are good for you when you only wake up to work hard to make sure that your dreams will come to fruition. And remember, no man is going to work hard for your dreams to make come true. It is you who works hard. Remember, I'll say a statement that I said in the beginning. A man is only finished when he gives up. Don't give up. Work hard. Challenges will come on your way, but let it not deter your dreams. Be a Joseph who had a dream and made sure that his dreams will come true. Thank you. Thank you, my good everyone.
Thank you very much. Pastor Laveni, Pastor Moyo, can you summarize? But before you summarize, there is this question here. The question says, if a young man has identified they need counseling to deal with issues affecting how they approach relationships, are there any counseling services within the Adventist community?
Yes, there are. We are here. The panelists are here. There are local pastors, there are elders. There is more than enough help available.
Thank you very much. And now you can go ahead and summarize.
Okay. My presentation.
Before you summarize, Pastor, and
Yes.
we have there's a number here. Please check on your chat from Mrs. Babbage. There is what we call Adventist Mental Health Association of Zimbabwe, and the number is on there. Please, you can also utilize that opportunity. Go on, Pastor Laveni.
All right, thank you. Mine was on worldviews and the fantasy that what I believe and how I perceive reality as I walk into marriage is how my spouse is going to perceive reality. And that unfortunately has led to points of conflict. But until we interrogate, until we come to a point where we question our value system and align it to scripture, can we come to a point where we have realistic expectations. And I also want to suggest that how you view things is not how your spouse is going to view things. So as you get into marriage, you will need to accept your spouse for who they are. You will need to understand where they are coming from and work towards a common goal. It is very important to build and to influence our worldview based on scripture. And the Bible is very, very clear. Not only is the Bible a spiritual book, but it is also a practical book that gives us practical pointers on how best to achieve success in our lives. And so with that, I want to say, let's understand the way we perceive reality. Let's understand our worldview and not build expectations which are unrealistic. Thank you, Elder Machando.
Thank you very much. Allow me to add and say, you see, if your wife wants to learn how poverty tests, let it not be in your training school. You need to be above it. If she has to learn about that, let it be somewhere else. And the reason why we have this platform, we are giving you opportunities that we never had. We are giving you time to open up your minds, to see the future as it is. So much so that when things go out of hand, you are solely responsible for what you did not do right. Mind you, you can only but blame your parents for a little while, but very soon you will be the parent. So by the end of the day, if we give you a raw deal, please make sure you are preparing yourself so that you do not give your child a raw deal. Elder Mtema, whilst you are on that, could you also relate to a question where this young man is saying, if that mentorship was not available until 21, what should the young man do?
Thank you, Elder. Allow me to first respond to the question before I summarize. If that mentorship was not, can you hear me out?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, if the mentorship was not provided before 21, we need to change our mindset that I need to have a girlfriend at 21. You need to have a girlfriend when you are prepared to be a husband and a father. You need to have a girlfriend when you know and understand the responsibilities that are there. So if the mentorship was not there before 21, get the preparation, which is one of the objectives of these meetings. We are trying to prepare our young men so that they become real husbands and real fathers, despite the lacking of the mentorship that was there. So to respond bluntly, if the mentorship was not there before 21, don't rush to get a girlfriend because the preparation is not yet there. True success in marriage life depends on the preparation that is needed before one is a girlfriend, before one is married. Simply because someone is 25 doesn't mean he can be a good father and a good husband. So if the preparation was not there, delay having the girlfriend. You are not supposed to have a girlfriend simply because you're now on it or simply because you now want to do everything that everyone else is doing. Then in summary, I wanted to say, gents, let's stop fantasizing about marriage. You know, the things that we hear on social media, the things that we hear from some of the folks in the bars and where we spend our time, some of the things are not realistic. You know, I had one guy who was saying, I want to get married so that I can have sex 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. You know, all that is fantasy. It's not realistic. When you get in marriage, that's when you start realizing that, you know, there's food that needs to be eaten, but for that food to be on the table, someone has to work for it. So I wanted to summarize in saying, we started on the financial aspect to say, being a father, being a husband, calls you to be a true patriarch. And being a patriarch means you have to be a provider. You have to be a security provider. You have to be a shelter provider in the family. And all these responsibilities, our young men, they need to know before they even ask out someone. They need to know what it means when you now have a girlfriend. Later on, they need to know what it means when they have gotten married. And we also touched on the spiritual aspect to say, you know, marriage is spiritual. Marriage is spiritual. And for us to be able to tackle most of the problems that are there, in as much as we need the communication skills and all other skills, in as much as we need all that, but a true house priest of the house has to have a big spiritual backbone. And hence we are saying, before one gets into marriage, let's have a proper training. Let's have a true mentorship financially, socially, and also spiritually.
Thank you very much. Let me read the comment from Muchwandamira here, who says the girl child is now being empowered while the boy child is neglected. It is easier for the lady to get a job compared to their counterpart. Okay, allow me to comment on this one and say, it will be very unfair if we say the girl child is getting a better deal because she is being favored. Because there are ladies out there who are working for it. There are ladies out there who are being groomed by their mothers. There are ladies out there who are doing their duties at home, therefore maturing faster. And there are ladies out there who are giving it a run and they are getting the throughput. But unfortunately, we continuously take it as though the ladies are favored by nature and by the community. When in real life, some of them are giving it a run. So basically, when the ladies are making it, let us not take it as though their intention is to overtake us, but let's pull up our socks and we should move, because it must be a challenge. We must feel challenged and we must be driven harder so that we provide. And gentlemen, allow me to say, gone are the days where ladies would walk into your home and expect to be fed. These guys are now able to feed themselves. They wake up, they go to work, and they've got the means. They are not only looking at you to buy them cars. Most of them, they can even afford to buy cars. So they are not coming into our lives as parasites, but they are coming into our lives with something to offer. The problem will only come when they realize him whom they thought to be the man of the house has nothing to offer. And by the end of the day, all he has is his mouth. That is a difficult scenario. So my advice to you would be, we need to wake up, we need to give it a go, we need to run, and we need not to tire. And in conclusion, I start with the Pastor Laven. Pastor Moyo, could you give us your parting words?
Thank you very much, Elder. I really want to thank everyone, and thank you, Elder, for hosting this show. A man can never achieve more than the limitations that his mind puts on him. If you put a ceiling on yourself, that this is what I can achieve, you then fall into the temptation of blaming your circumstances for your failures. We need to take responsibility for our future. We need to take responsibility for the future that we want for our children. And I can assure you, when we take that responsibility and when we dare to move out of our comfort zone, to move out of the limitations of our worldviews and move into a space where we understand that abundance can only be found in God, then God will do greater things with us than we have ever thought or imagined. With those words, I say thank you.
Thank you very much. Uncle Ivan?
Thank you, Pastor Laven. It was quite an eye-opener for you to come on the trajectory of a worldview. And we really appreciate the kind words and the beautiful insights that you brought on you. And to the young men under the dictates of my voice, I'll still continue to charge you and say, be thou a man. You know, the world is looking for people who stand in the gap. We are living in a world that is full of problems, gaps, and we're looking for young men. Indeed, I know a lot of people have mentioned that the world has seemed to put all its resources on improving the girl child. And that alone is not a defense for you to be able to say, no. I mean, the opportunity lies on you to become a provider, a protector. Do whatever it takes as a man to make sure that you stand in the gap, be the problem solver in the situations that are within your life. I would also want to say, don't wait for mentors to come to you and say, hey, Ivan, I've been watching you, I would want to mentor you. I mean, go for it. If you see people who are making it in life, go to them and talk to them and say, hey, you know, I've seen you can do A, B, C, D. I think this is what I would want to do in my life. Can you carry my hand and take me through? I would want to follow your footsteps. I'm saying, don't wait for people to say you have potential. Go and show people what you are made of, and then let them see what lies within you to be able to make sure that you are actually the only way to realizing your dreams. So please make sure, I mean, you don't necessarily have to go to a spiritual person for you to be mentored. I'm saying, even if you're Adventist, even if you're Anglican, even if you are a Christian, but if you see a Muslim who is making it in life and you adore and aspire to do exactly what they're doing, there's nothing that can stop you to go and look for people who can mentor you. I mean, I think it was Elder Osi who mentioned that we've got 3 aspects in life, 3 levels: the social, the spiritual, as well as the cognitive. If you see people who are good in what you are good at on the social aspect, go to them and tell them who you are. If there are people in your church, then that's where you probably need a pastor and elder, someone who would guide you spiritually. And of course, when it comes to issues of cognitive things or business mind, as Pastor Laven had said, and I still want to encourage you, please go and read the book that Pastor Laven has actually given us to go and read, The Wise Men in Babylon. You glean a lot of things in life. If you don't find a physical mentor, be mentored by the writings that we can find that can grow us to become better men. Thank you once again, Elder Mtema. I love the way that you always refer to your one of the best writers that you have experienced, and may the best writer not only change your life but change our lives. Then thank you, host, for giving us this beautiful discussion. God bless you. That's my words for today.
Thank you very much. I like it from Sherin Taylor here. She says, very true. We need more positive male role models and mentors. Basically, this is what women are saying to us. Women do not want to take over our positions. Women do not want to be in the driving seat. But women want people who have magnitude and direction. And that's basically what is required. Someone who is not going to complain for nothing, shout for nothing, someone who is going somewhere. And this is the reason why we are here, so that we can direct our footsteps. Elder Mtema. Am I seeing the right?
Yeah. Yes, Elder.
Thank you very much. What's your parting word?
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage my brothers who are here to say, guys, we have no excuse but to excel. And despite the backgrounds that we are all coming from, it is your duty to find out the responsibilities that we have as a boyfriend. We need to know the responsibilities that are there, later on as a husband. So before one becomes a boyfriend, let us know the responsibilities that are there, instead of then crying to say, Vaskana Anodajin. Before one becomes a husband, let us find out the responsibilities and make sure we are well equipped and well prepared for a job that is well prepared for, is already half done. So when we well prepare ourselves for marriage, which will soon come, we have already half done the work. May God bless you guys. Let's raise the standard up high. Some of us, we didn't have these opportunities of being mentored the way you guys are now being mentored, and you need to take advantage of that. Never let your background be an excuse for not raising the scale up. Look for mentors, your spiritual mentors. Look for financial mentors. Look for moral mentors. Look for mentors even in terms of skill. And make sure before you become a husband, you are well prepared for the responsibilities of marriage.
Thank you very much. And let me say this in parting. Opportunities will always appear to be scarce if you do not look deeper. And if you hang around with people who make you comfortable in your nothingness, you will think you are an achiever when you are going nowhere. And if you rest in the comfort of your fantasy without waking up to work, you will think you are going somewhere when you are going nowhere. You don't need anyone else to wake you up on this one. You know who you are. You know, there are some people who are 40. There are some people who are 45 who have made it in life. Not because they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, but because they saw opportunities and they rose up to the game. So this is my challenge to you, young men. You need to stand up and be a man. Opportunities will not come your way. You have got to run and hunt for them. Let us not fantasize. Let us not live a theoretical world. Let us wake up. Let us be moving. Allow me to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, we thank thee for this day and for the opportunities that you have given us. It is our wish and our prayer that you mentor our sons, so much so that when they get there, they will be what you want them to be. May you be available for those who are willing to be mentored. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you very much. I say goodbye to everyone. We shall be meeting again next week. May the good Lord bless you, and may you please utilize the opportunities that we have. For those who are stuck, may you please seek for help. For those who need psychological or mental health to be helped mentally, the contacts we have. For those who want a one-on-one, you can talk to these guys, the facilitators. They are very much available. You can talk to them, and they are going to help you. And if you are lost in this small world, could you please seek for advice? This is the time. and you need to do that. May the good Lord bless you. Hope to see you next week. Thank you very much.